Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
You better leave me.
Put your hands behind your back.
Leave me alone.
Put your hands behind your back. Now. Hey folks, Eric Muldrow here with Code Red Conversations. Thanks for joining me. Before we get into this video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and share my content if you really appreciate it and you think someone else could benefit from it. Today I'll be reviewing an incident out of Cashin, Oklahoma where a 65-year-old woman was tased. Check out the video.
It issue for a defective equipment, it's $80. You have till September 16th to take care of this. Get you to sign there with the Exodus.
So you don't even give a warning for this?
You've been driving around for 6 months like that.
I'm truthful.
Well, I'm not going to give you a warning for something you've been driving for 6 months.
But, well, I don't want to sign it because I don't want to do $80.
You don't want to sign it?
No, because I don't think that I deserve to pay $80 for something that is fixable and I can fix it.
All right.
That's all you want
Go ahead,
to do.
step out of the car.
Why?
Because you're under arrest. Step out. Step out of the vehicle.
No, I'm not.
Step out.
No.
Step out. I'm giving you a lawful order. Step out.
You be fair with me and I'll be fair with you.
Step out.
No.
You're under arrest.
No, I'm not.
I'm placing you under arrest. Step
You
out.
are full of because you're not placing me under no arrest.
Do not take off.
Shut up and give me that and I'll sign it.
Step out.
No.
We're beyond that.
You want me
Step
to-
out.
Get out of the car. 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 Get out of the car.
You better leave me.
Put your hands behind your back.
Leave me alone.
Put your hands behind your back. Now.
I said leave me alone. I mean it. Leave me alone.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Lay down and put your hands behind your back.
I will stand down.
Now.
I will stand down.
No, you will not. You're going to get it again.
What are you?
Do you realize you just got yourself in a whole lot more trouble
What?
for running?
Oh, I didn't run. I told you you weren't going to arrest me. I pulled in here thinking that you would not.
You hurt?
Yeah, I'm hurt.
What hurts?
Everything.
All right, I got EMS on the way. Just hang tight.
You got a what on the way?
I got an ambulance on the way. Check you out.
Ambulance? I don't need an ambulance.
Well, you got tased, so they got to check you out.
You did not have to taser me.
You wouldn't comply. You wouldn't get out, and then you tried to kick me. So
Why?
yes, I did.
Yeah, I tried to kick you because
Yeah.
I'm a country girl. Because no, I
And
didn't
you got
like being
tased
thrown on
because
the
of
floor.
it.
Yes, and I didn't like being thrown on the ground.
Well, next time, listen to what I'm telling you to do.
Okay, watch the video, and I'm sure a lot of you folks have a lot of different opinions about it. From what I've seen from the comments, whether it be on social media or on YouTube, people are all over the place on this video. So I'd like to point out a few things. I'd like to keep this video relatively brief. First and foremost is a point that I bring up nearly every time I reference a shooting or any type of use of force incident that involves the police. Compliance can save lives. Compliance can keep your butt from getting hurt. If you do what the police officers tell you to do, you can minimize your problems drastically. If you ever get pulled over by an officer and he asks you out of the vehicle and you wonder why, you don't know why, you may even think that he's violating your rights, The best way to deal with the incident initially is to comply. If you feel as if your rights were violated, you can always make an internal complaint at a later date, but always think safety, because the officer is thinking about safety. So always understand that the officer doesn't know who you are. You could have no ill will towards that officer whatsoever, but he or she has to have the mindset of handling the situation to the best of their ability, keeping everyone involved safe, most importantly themselves and other citizens in the area. So if you have a complaint, take it to internal affairs, let them deal with it, hash out your issues at a later date, but cooler heads always prevail. In this incident, the older lady, the 65-year-old woman, was clearly in the wrong. I'm not sure what the laws are in the state of Oklahoma, but what I do know is here in Vegas, signing a ticket isn't a necessary admission of guilt. It's just a promise to appear in court, because a ticket or a citation is in lieu of arrest. So if you refuse to comply or sign a citation, the officer can take you into custody. Her attitude caused this entire encounter to go awry. She was non-compliant, she was rude, she was disrespectful, even though she was clearly in the wrong. Clearly in the wrong. And unfortunately, you can't say she was young and didn't know any better. She was 65, so she should have known better. Driving around on what it sounded like an equipment violation for months on end. You don't get kudos, you don't get extra points for being honest. If you're in the wrong, there are consequences. As much as people want to believe it to be the case, driving is not a right, it's a privilege. So her best bet would have just been to sign the citation. She could have saved herself a whole bunch of problems. But she chose not to. She decided to argue and fight. And then when the officer went to place her into custody, she locked the doors and refused, and then she drove off. Now, what are some of the things the officer could have done possibly that could have changed this whole equation? Because I've been in similar encounters, when she refused to sign the citation and then he told her he was placing her under arrest, he could have, if there was one available, he could have reached out for a supervisor, or he could have reached out for another officer, because sometimes the tension has escalated to the point to where the individuals aren't willing to listen to one another. And again, I'm not saying the officer was in the wrong, but sometimes when an encounter like this starts to go haywire, starts to spin a little bit out of control, you don't always think with the most clarity, and you're not always at your most understanding. And in order to not to place someone into custody, perhaps he could have called out another officer, perhaps he could have called out a supervisor and had them talk to the woman and convince her to sign it without things having to turn into the ugly mess that they did. Personally, after she finally admitted, rolled down her window and said, well, give me the ticket and I'll sign it, I would have let her sign the citation, because I don't want to take an old lady to jail. That's just me. Even though some of the video footage was edited out, probably for time's sake, who knows how long he sat there trying to go back and forth with her. He probably was at his wit's end and decided, I'm done with this, you're going to jail. Secondly, when she takes off, she just continued to escalate the encounter and force the officer's hand repeatedly. She takes off, she drives off, he follows after her, pursues her. Some people are questioning why the officer pulled her out at gunpoint. Well, believe it or not, age doesn't necessarily mean that you're not a potential danger. I've seen many incidents where an older person shot and gunned down a police officer, and they've resonated with me. And oftentimes it happens because the officer's threat perception is lowered because he sees an older person. He may look at an older woman and think that she wouldn't bring him any harm, but you just never know the mindset of the person that you're dealing with. So it's always safest to bring in a higher level of force to take control over the call and then lower it when necessary. So him drawing down on her at gunpoint, with her having full access to her car, I have no problem with that whatsoever. Now, I'm in complete agreement with him physically pulling her out of the car. I think that was spot on, that was good. What I would have done was continue with that. I don't see a 65-year-old woman overpowering a relatively healthy younger male officer. I don't see it. So I would have just physically manipulated her wrist, perhaps got some additional pain compliance, had her turn over and handcuffed her. That's what I would have done. Would I have tased her? I don't think so. I think tasing someone, even though different states and cities and counties have different standards when it comes to using that level of force, some places you can't use it at all. But even though a lot of different places have different standards for when you can use it, it seems as if he was justified in using that level of force because she was completely combative. She was kicking and being completely uncooperative. Again, that wouldn't have been the route I would have went. I would have tried to de-escalate this. I would have just tried to control her physically. Tasing a 65-year-old woman, even though I know many tests have been done to evaluate the effect, the impact it can have on someone. When someone gets older, my personal opinion, I think you have to be really careful when it comes down to sending electric currents through their body. Now, I'm not saying this as any type of medical expert or taser expert to that degree, even though I was I was a defensive tactics instructor and I did instruct and teach on taser use. I personally would still be very careful in its use in an encounter like this with a person of that age, considering the level of resistance that they were bringing towards me. Now, if we're talking about she was in possession of a weapon, things might have been different. But in this encounter, I would have just used physical force to subdue her. Once again, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, share my content, comment down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let's have a conversation. Let's have a discussion about it. In the meantime, stay safe, God bless, and make sure you join the conversation. Peace out.